Bye. Welcome, everybody, to the November 24, 2025 Wallet Interoperability SIG meeting. Today, we're joined by David Magard, who's going to present WeBuild and organizational wallets, and we cannot thank him enough for this, for offering to share his knowledge with our community. As with all Linux Foundation meetings, this is held under the Linux Foundation antitrust policy. If you have any questions about these matters, please contact your company counsel, or if you're a member of the Linux Foundation, feel free to contact Andrew Updegrove of the firm Gesmer Updegrove LLP, which provides legal counsel to the Linux Foundation. This is also held under the Linux Foundation Code of Conduct, which can best be summed up as be excellent to each other, and we're going to get a lot done. This meeting is being recorded and may be posted to the Open Wallet Foundation YouTube. And by may, I mean definitely will be once the video is encoded and I get time to upload it to YouTube, which will probably be tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. If there's anyone new on the call today, other than our speaker, but if you'd like to introduce yourself, now's the time. Let us know. Well, let us know your name and what you're looking to get out of this community. And if you'd like, there's no requirement to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I can
Alrighty.
introduce myself.
Oh, go right ahead.
I've come the past couple weeks. Apologize, my voice sounds pretty bad right now. A little sick, but Caleb Seabach. I work at Indicio. I've just been attending the past couple weeks. Here to learn more and get my feet a little wet in the open source community. So,
Awesome. Welcome, Caleb. And a number of us in the Open Wallet Foundation have either worked with or known Indicio folks, so you're in great company. Anyone else? I think I recognize almost all the names today. We don't really have a lot of new folks. Hey, welcome, Carol. Thanks for joining us. All right, let's get to the agenda so we can get to I found out just now that you folks aren't here to listen to me talk. You're here to hear our great presenter. Um, we need a co-chair for the SIG. We're currently working on it, hoping to have an announcement after the Thanksgiving holiday. There is no wallet interoperability SIG meeting next Monday, December 1st. This is a holiday week in the United States. We're going to start losing people after today who are going away or taking a long weekend or a longer weekend or a full week off. And next Monday is usually Cyber Monday in the States. So even though we are a global community, the odds we're not going to get a great turnout next Monday. So we're paused. We show up the following Monday. We're going to have a meeting and we're working right now on getting a speaker for that. The architecture SIG is happening immediately after this call. We are talking about the overall architecture SIG mapping process. We're working with projects to map and understand the project better for two reasons. To build maps, not to score or rank the projects, but so folks can find things easier, understand where things are, understand where the commonalities are between the projects, and also where the differences are. So that effort continues, and that's going to be a 30-minute meeting at 6 p.m. CET, noon ET, 9 a.m. PT. It's in a little less than an hour from now. Quick project updates. I know I've got some project maintainers on the call today. Stephen Curran, any quick updates for Occupy you want to share?
We, as noted, the last couple of weeks we've had 1.4.0 released. We're going to do a 1.4.1. There was a really minor one-liner issue that's come out, but we need to address it. So 1.4.1 will be likely the release candidate will be out this week. Just sorting out anything else we want to put in it, and we'll have that out. I think that's the main things to talk about there. Lots of work in with Akapai with DidWebVH for production use. We're getting very close to that in our community. I think in others as well. So there's been a lot of work on the DidWebVH server and defining exactly how one would apply governance of DIDs and other objects published on the DidWebVH server, um, how governance is done. So matching what we did, what was available with didINDI of being able to endorse and approve DIDs before, so you can have a central governing authority that approves of DIDs before they are published and other related data. And so that's all now pretty much in place, and we're rolling out dev test and prod as far as making that public
Awesome.
in our ecosystem. Yeah.
The next Occupy user group meeting, also known as Occupug, is happening tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Yeah. Conversation tomorrow will be about OpenID for VC implementations in Akapai. So the folks that have been leading the development of the plugins for OpenID for VC and for status lists will be talking about OpenID in general and the implementations available in Akapai.
Brilliant. And I'm going to find the video while our presenter is doing the presenting. But there was a great discussion. I believe last week, Dave McKay was on the Occupy maintainers call talking about the stuff he's doing for next year.
Cool.
No, no, that was
I
last
think
week.
that was Credo.
Oh,
That was
sorry. Oh my
Credo.
gosh. I apologize to the
Yeah.
Credo team. Yeah, I got too many meetings. I'm going mixing up in my head. Last week on the Credo call, Dave McKay from the Canon team gave a fantastic presentation about the things in their roadmap that they're doing for 2026. I will find that. I will put it in the wiki and I'll put it in the I'll put the link in chat in a second. Credo TS team, they have a community call next week on 12/4 Thursday. Bifold meets next Tuesday, 12/2. And the VCX team is meeting. This is originally Aries Rust. This is meeting this Wednesday at midnight CET, 6 p.m. ET, 3 p.m. Pacific. I couldn't even tell you what the maintainer's time zone is because he's in Melbourne, Australia, and I can't keep that in my head at the same time. But he's going to be there, and I might show up. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Bo to introduce our speaker.
Okay. David Margot has been a central figure in the EWC work, co-leading that with some help from Finland. And now he is the co-lead of WeBuild, an extremely knowledgeable and good communicator who is going to make things happen in Europe. I'm sure quite much now aided by the European Commission that made it clear, immediately echoed by the German Prime Minister, that organizational wallets will be mandatory for all public sector organizations. In my book, the only way. But over to you, David, and thank you for accepting in your tight schedule to come here and speak.
Okay, thank you very much, Bo, and thank you everyone else for being here. This just a warning. This is after office hours in Sweden, and my two sons are in that room. I bribed them with gingerbread and television, but my wife is stuck in traffic, so we'll see if they jump in. I need to tend to that, but it should be fine. As Bo said, and I'm going to start sharing, and as my screen, I have some different roles in this ecosystem. I will also share this presentation afterwards. You will have it. It's not that
So
complicated
David,
or long,
we can see the screen. WeBuild Consortium, WeBuild, and some experiences from EWC. You're good to go.
Perfect. So it's a bit of a mix of different things, and for some of you, I guess these acronyms and so on aren't that intuitive, but I'll try to explain. But I've been part of also the Open Wallet Forum and Open Wallet Foundation when actually it started as a share for some time as well. So I'm very happy to see this collaboration going on. I'm just gonna do a short recap on this whole thing, and we need to start from natural persons, physical persons, people. But in the EU, we have, of course, a lot of strategies. One important one is a digital decade. A lot of the regulations that you might have heard of comes from this strategy. And it says that all 100% of the union citizens should have access to EID. That is also recognized throughout the union. That means that I as a Swede should be able to use my EID scheme wherever in the union, in let's say Spain, when I travel or when I want to log in or when I want to see if I can get a better mortgage rate in Spain or Germany than I can get in Sweden. This is not possible today, but we hope that this work will enable that. There's also a big chunk of this that's about integrity and privacy. The user should have full control of their identity, transaction, and shared personal data. And I can already say that this is the most complicated part, really. We see a lot of developments here, so knowledge proofs and revocation and all of the things that you guys probably work with. It's tricky to get into a state of actual implementation. But we're working on it. The wallets are important. I think I will say this a couple of times, but I always say that especially in other countries or outside of the union, that it's an infrastructure. Really, you need to view it as an infrastructure. It creates possibilities to do a lot of things, depending how you implement it and how you do it. In Sweden, we have already an EID scheme, bank ID, used for, 15 years. 99.6% of the adult population have that and uses it frequently. But it's for identification and authentication. But when it rolled out, we saw that we can do more things. I think the wallet will add additional functionalities to that. But it's still I think it's a infrastructure, it's core infrastructure. That means also there are no golden use cases, or you should just focus on like mobile driver license. That's the thing. That is something, but it's not the thing. In my mind, it's not that sexy for the politicians to sell that, of course, and I understand why they want to promote a certain use case or so on to make it more tangible for the population and so on. But I think when we speak about this in a not political environment, then we should use it as an infrastructure. Exchange of data. This comes into a lot of other EU initiatives, such as data spaces, which is mainly kind of secure environments to exchange data within the union. And then we also have coming more and more, I would say, secure payments that connects to the wallet. In this, of course, we have the discussion of the euro. So this is 2 slides from the Commission. That's how they view it. The wallet in themselves, EU wallets, identity wallets, should be accepted, as I said, by public sector, by the major online platforms. That means Amazon, Meta, Google, and so on. and other private actors that use a strong two-factor authentication. So that in Sweden at least will mean that a lot of the organizations will need to accept the UI wallet. And there's also a strict deadline on this, and it's approaching fast. In this slide, you can see that the member states are responsible for ensuring that there is a PID. I think you guys know what that is, but personal identification data, and a wallet, and that those things can connect, thereby creating a European digital identity wallet. And we'll see if the member states are successful in this. I think some will and some won't, but everyone is working quite hard on this. There's also a huge set of rules coming out. Some of you might have seen or watched or contributed to the architecture reference framework that is non-binding and kind of suggestions really to the ecosystem, but also to regulators on how the implementing acts should look like, and also the standardization bodies, of course. To test out and trial the regulation, really, there is a set of large-scale pilots, and these are the ones I will speak a bit about today. In the first batch, there were 4 of them. In the second batch, there were 2. And as said, I was the coordinator of EWC, which is being finalized at the moment, basically administrative stuff left. And then we have the WeBuild consortium that I'm co-coordinator of, together with the Dutch Business Register and Ministry of Economic Affairs. The idea of these consortia is to that different organizations, public, private, should form a consortia and test out different use cases and technology choices and infrastructure and so on. And yeah, we'll see about that more. I'll come back to it. And as Bo just mentioned, yes, recently the Commission proposed now the European Business Wallet. So it will build upon the EIDAS2, the Digital Identity Wallet regulation. But in that regulation, there was parts about legal person wallets, legal person identification data, LPID, that is now suggested to be withdrawn and put into this business wallet regulation. This is a proposal, so that means that it's not decided. It will be negotiated within the European Parliament and within the European Council, that is the member states, and then we'll see if we can find a way forward in this. I think it sounds promising. We'll see. You can also see here on the slide in the lower end that the Commission also refers to the WeBuild consortia as a consortia to test out some of the use cases that they think is relevant for the EU business wallet. And what that is, we'll see. We don't know exactly, but I have some ideas. So WeBuild, starting from that, this project started really officially in May this year, but in reality in September. We worked on it for quite a while before. It's a use case driven consortia. That means that we actually went out and asked the ecosystem what kind of usage and possible scenarios do you think are useful for you when it comes to using digital identity wallets, be it for natural persons or businesses, legal persons, with a main focus on the latter, so businesses. And then we, from there on, worked on. We have, as you see, a lot of actors involved, member states, non-EU countries, and a lot of business registers. That is important. You'll see why in a short. and they come from all sectors really, and small and global. Yeah, I'll always push this. You can see that this is from our kind of general presentations. Also, what we're trying to do here, it's a bit similar to the WeBuild Foundation, of course, is that we want to gather the relevant parties and work together to build and promote the ecosystem. So often in the EU, many of these consortia are kind of strict. They're not letting in too many. As you saw, we let in very many with the hope of ensuring that we find all of these roles. And also to kind of build up an ecosystem, because I think that we can see that this is lacking a bit in the EU. There are a lot of good work done on the technology side, on the business level, but we need all of these roles to kind of come together at the same time. And the chicken and egg problem is really prominent here. Without the issuers, of course, there wouldn't be anything issued. Without the users, no one will ask for anything, and relying parties. If that doesn't work, users won't be able to use their at the station. So we need to work with this together. Mentioned the different use cases that we asked for. We actually had 64 suggestions. All of them kind of intact, really, when it comes to having different partners and so on. That was too much. We in the end came down to 13. But I think this shows where really not I, but the ecosystem, because that's more important. I think that there are values here. Many of these, I would say, is still kind of on the kind of fundamental level, but that also to me says that this is infrastructure, really. You use the wallet to enable other things. You can of course ask questions about it, but we can come back to this later if you want to. The work that we are doing in WeBuild, and of course Aptitude, the second consortia that is now running in the second batch, is building upon the work done in the already finished consortias. Aptitude is led by the French Ministry of Interior and is focusing on travel, use case in travel using wallets, and also in payments. As WeBuild pretty much payments as well, but we have a very close collaboration, and they are kind of more on the natural person side, whereas we are working on the business side, or consumer or business if you want to. And then we go over to EWC, one of the consortia stand that is now finished. We worked with the use cases in travel payments and organization, legal person, digital identity. So I will just say business wallets now, or businesses, because that's what the regulation says. But it's actually not only businesses; it's organizations or economic operators, as it's called in the business wallet regulations. So that could be pretty much anyone, including public sector entities. This was member state driven, so from Sweden and Finland, as Bo mentioned. And we really had public-private cooperation, and we feel that is important. We want to have the companies really involved and also leading a lot of the work. A bit smaller, but still very big. 88 participating organizations. It was 20 million euros for 2 years used up in consortia. And we mainly focus on remote use of the wallet. A lot of the things we can take a bit credit for SDJ being a bit more prominent in the EU, and that because we worked a lot with that, we thought that MDL didn't really was sufficient when it came to much of the remote use of the wallet that we wanted to enable. Yeah, and it ends. It's pretty much ended. And we got a lot of good feedback on this. I will just mention some of the things that we done in the other areas except for the business wallet, and then I will say more about the business wallet because I think that was the main idea of this presentation. So we actually did some trials, mainly with Amadeus and Lufthansa, on the use of wallet when it comes to some of the things that you do when you want to travel. So secure possible check-in and also more efficient ways to board a plane and so on. What I think is most interesting is the numbers that we got back from the users, that they actually thought that this was making their lives easier and better in this domain. And that's we haven't really had, even though there is a lot of regulation about it and analytics and so on before the regulation, there wasn't that much tested actually. And of course, the wallet didn't really exist and so on. But I think this looks actually very promising to say that we can then move on and kind of roll this out. And I know that the Lufthansa and Amadeus people were very positive, and they went through these scenarios. Same thing in the payment sector. There were a smaller number of tests here, but Visa and other players in EWC did some tests using payments combined with the wallet, and also here we can see that there is some nice statistics here. So there should be a way forward here. I think many were a bit anxious that the users wouldn't like the wallets, and they used to something else, American companies. But with this, the results, can say that we can actually deliver something here that's beneficial to all. And of course, it can be delivered by American companies as well. As you can see, some of them were also part of this. And we, this is just to show that some of the task force that were involved in payment, and also some of the principles and key questions. You will find all of these on the homepage, and I will have a link in the end of the presentation to this. But one of the key hurdles that we can see is the banks are a bit skeptic on some parts of this. And that is mainly, I don't know mainly, but what I hear at least, that they're not sure if the wallet have this strong authentication method that they view as or need to attend to this SCA. So we'll see about that. But I think this will be clarified in some time. That means, of course, that it will be even more relevant to use the wallet when it comes to banking payments. We did actually also a real in production. Of course, the wallet aren't formally officially here yet, since it's in December 26. Then it's enforced. But as much as possible in production, we're enabled to have Romanian citizens in Greece using his Romanian wallet to Romanian bank with payment through Visa, going to a ferry in Greece. All of this in the wallets. There are videos and demos about this on the homepage, where you can see how it goes. And it's in the wallet he could also share that he was a student. Didn't need to share much more than that. And also he carried a ticket and so on. Also, we didn't get, as it was just like one test in actual production, we didn't get so much feedback on the user experience, except that this person really liked it. So here you can see the actual ticket that was in folder. So With this, going over to the business use cases that were trialed in the WC, we use different cases to test the technology and the infrastructure. And in essence, we actually were more working on the kind of main things that was what is an actual business wallet and what is an identifier for a business wallet. But we did that in the frame of these use cases. So public procurement, KYC, I think will be very big when it comes to this, and e-receipts and so on, and also creating company brush. Our perception is that it comes from the business registers. Of course, in EU we do have business registers that are quite well functioning and also interconnected. And you can see that in the third bullet, EUDI, European Union Digital Identifier. That is something that actually comes a long time before the wallets and added to the ecosystem. So it is an infrastructure that connects, as I said, the business registers. You can get a unique identification number for your business. It's free of charge for the businesses. And there's, of course, a lot of existing solutions and data models and semantic already done in this. So that is one of the reasons that we propose that this should be the LPID, as it was called then. But now it's something like European Business Wallet Operation Identification Number or something in the Business Wallet Regulation. But it also states that it should be used on the regulation should use the EUDI. So we're successful in that, at least to this part. But I think that that's something important. We already have a trusted infrastructure, and we just kind of build upon that. And then more on the kind of work that was done. So the business wallet requirements and architecture, definition of the LPID again, and some definitions on data schemas for legal persons at the stations in these fields. Of course, power of attorney might be the one that mainly kind of think of beforehand. That is delegation, representation, all of these things come into that use case. And then we tested it out in different parts. We have, as you can see, a few business registers involved. And one of the things that we, at least from the start, from the Nordics, came in with is that we think that this could, and we're quite sure of that because we did some other tests and so on, can ensure automated data change flows, and that is probably the real value of this in many cases when it comes to legal persons. So a lot of things you can actually do as a natural person with a natural person wallet. You can have like an attestation that you represent the company and so on. But when you can connect the businesses with the wallets, you can create automated flows that are trusted, secure, and in a trusted ecosystem and environment. A lot of things will flow much faster and be much easier to manage, but also supervise. These two pictures now comes from different presentations where we've been saying our points to member states and commission and others. Of course, I'm representing a member state in many capacities, but this is like the summarized views of EWC. So again, business wallet, an infrastructure component. We want to see this being done from the perspective of the businesses and market driven. Of course, there's regulation here, but we think the market should do a lot, and you can see it in the business wallet regulation, which doesn't have the idea of an ARF or reference wallet, and that the member state should provide this wallet for businesses and so on, as we can see in the EIDS2 regulation. We do think that there are lesser demands and there should be greater flexibility in national personal wallets. So the regulatory framework should be a bit looser. And this is important to state, I mean, from people maybe outside of the EU as well. I mean, since we have the regulation of ERS2 where it says things about the legal person, but it kind of is viewed from a natural person wallet frame. It doesn't really fit. So, there's user interface demands and so on that we don't really see is relevant when it comes to to business wallet. Incentives are what it calls a problem. That's what I said about, everyone needs to be part of this in the ecosystem. Some things that need to be evaluated. I don't think that they are really sold in business wallet regulation as it looks like, but some might be. There are more on the GitHub that I have a link to as well. On the more technical side, I know you guys are much more technical than I am, but some of the takeaways that we've seen as well is like secure validation of business identity records that enables businesses to work more fast and kind of integrate to each other and interact them digitally, which also goes to the point of wallet-to-wallet interactions. And that is something that we've been kind of vocal about, that the natural person wallets and how it's built, it started out when it came out like the user has a wallet and then the relying party and the issuer doesn't really. But we think that actually all of those roles can be wallet. There can be wallets on all of the sides, and of course, sometimes there is just two interactions really, or one interaction from user to the business to business interactions, to the B2B interactions. So that's something a bit different. But it makes it possible to have instantaneous sharing of attestation presentations, human vulnerabilities reduced. We have the built-in trust anchors, the wallets, of course, themselves, but also the whole ecosystem that lies underneath the wallet and the already existing infrastructure of the EU DI. And this would, we hope, help us in the EU to create one market. It's really different when it comes to there are really many differences when it comes to the business environment. In some countries, you have a lot of paperwork. In Sweden, pretty much don't have any, and so on. So that is one, I think, key enabler to the whole union. There will be other demands of security. So these things with the qualified attestations, probably not that useful for many instances. And again, there is no golden use case really here, we think, but it should be useful in all business domains really. And then I have the links for you guys also to be aware of. We have an interoperability testbed in WeBuild. It should be start running in Q1 next year. And the idea is also that we will open that up. We'll first have it a bit closed for the participants, but then we'll hope to open it up. So we will have business wallets there. We will have issues and so on, and relying parties and so on. And that you should be able to actually connect into that and test out to be maybe a relying party or an issue, whatever, in the interoperability testbed, even though you're not part of the consortia itself. So yeah, that was my rather short presentation. Hope that was fine. Please, any questions? I see now that there is something in the chat maybe. So,
yeah, if you have a question, please raise your hand. David, that was great. Thank you so much. But by all means, folks, if you got a question, raise your hand. Let's ask David.
and if not, then
All right. Well, everybody's clapping for you. David, I've got a question for you. One of the things that when I first started working in decentralized identity that was really exciting wasn't an individual's wallet. It was the work that the BC.gov crew were doing, connecting local businesses with wallets first, right? So if I wanted to open a restaurant in Vancouver, I need to get a building department license and a health department license, and I need to get a liquor license. and my landlord needs all of these, and these could all be done with a credential or a series of verifiable credentials versus me running around the city of Vancouver with a growing folder full of paperwork. How is the European Commission? Did we lose David? Oh, no, he's still there.
No, I'm
How
sure.
is how is the European Commission working with WeBuild and working with the individual member states to build these ecosystems? Because you need an ecosystem across Europe. You need an ecosystem within each country.
Yeah.
There's an ecosystem in each industry. Like the travel industry by itself is an ecosystem of planes and airports and people who work there. How is that interaction flow working? And then after that question, Denkin, you're up next.
Yeah, it's a good question, and also I like the first point you said there about you need all of these different proofs and so on that can be verified credentials. I mean that's really what we're trying to do, and when you kind of look at the businesses, it should be easy, and I think we can build it actually with the business model because you have like one point of contact really to ensure that if you're you want to start a restaurant, that you actually have all these licenses that you can share them very very easy to the public authorities. And the second question, I would say like the main thing that they're actually doing, or we are doing, is these pilots. So as you saw, there are 13 use cases in WeBuild and like 180 actors. That's a lot, but it's of course very small when it comes to the whole union. But still something, and Aptitude has something similar. And then the different member states have different approaches on this. I would say, to be honest, in Sweden, it's kind of a watch and learn process really, because we already have a lot of things with digital identity. So it kind of we need to grow from there. In Germany, where they don't really have anything. They have a much more active approach from the top level and the whole way down, I would say. So it depends a bit on so on. And then in the different sectors, some sectors are really on this. I would say the banking industry are very interested, at least. They're looking at it. And then travel as well. And then we'll see about in some other areas. Yeah. Something like that. So hope that answers your question. Denkin, please.
That was a great answer. Thank you for that. Denkin, you're up.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. My first time here, and thank you for your sharing. And I work with the Taiwanese government. We are also building our own digital identity wallet, and I think most of the centers we've chosen align with the EU DI wallet. And I'm interested in the interoperability test you mentioned. Is a large pilot program or specifically for WeBuild interested in like doing the interoperability test with countries that is not within the European Union? Yeah.
Yeah. I would say most likely yes, but it depends on how far we can get with the interoperability test. But so first off, we will start with the organizations within WeBuild, and we'll expand it to EU because it's easier, of course, and then we'll see about countries outside of the EU. There is a second way in this, of course, that the different member states can actually do pilots as well, of course, unilaterally or bilaterally and so on. So Sweden is actually conducting a test on with Singapore and business wallet as well, business representation and company creating company branch in Sweden and Singapore. And I know that they already have a test bed with China, so maybe that's something also to look into. But then can feel free to send me an email with any questions and any interest, and we can see.
Great questions.
Sure. Thank you.
Bo, you're up.
Well, first of all, thank you, David, for a very solid presentation and solid work. Obviously, this is pretty much has been about herding cats on a speeding train, which is only increasing its speed. We here in this group obviously have to think about transatlantic interoperability for wallets, and now organization wallets are of course getting into full focus as EU came out with this eminent suggestion that they will be mandatory for public sector organizations. And it's easy to understand that to get that interaction or interchange of credentials to enterprises and from enterprises will save a lot of money and will actually make the SME sectors and others interested in taking the wallets in use. So now we should here in this group see to it that all possible wallet suppliers, especially in the organization wallet space, see this fantastic opportunity and start offering the solutions to the public sectors all over Europe. It's a major business opportunity as well, and as this is public-private, naturally, and EU has said that this is not anything that the states will build. It is from the market, by the market, and there, as you know, the FIDES in Holland, they have listed 26 organization wallets already. Interoperability needs to be addressed. That is being done by Findunet and FIDES together with the DIID interoperability focus, which has been presented here. And I think we need to come back to that, because to me, at least, it looks like the shoehorn for getting things happening in the enterprise sectors, and all wallet providers should take a serious look into what has been done there already. But interesting times, and naturally, as we know, the AI agentics was about to steal the limelight here. But now it is widely understood that you can't possibly take an AI agent in use without you having a wallet and the agent having a wallet. That should be on our agenda at the latest early next year, at how are these wallets actually getting married to the AI agents and the other way around. Fantastic times, as we know.
Yeah, if I can just add two things to that. So one is in the business wallet regulation, one of the reasons for the Commission to propose that is that they want to link the European digital identity ecosystem with outside of the Union countries and regions. So they have proposed a way there, and also the second part is, I think, it's much easier actually when it comes to the business side, because there are a lot of, trade already happening. There are a lot of standard structures and so on that can be built upon, unique identifiers and so on. When it comes to natural persons, I would say much trickier to have this global interoperability. But when it comes to businesses, in my view is that this will lead actually the interoperability work when it comes to digital identity, rather than natural persons and traveling through different countries and so on. Yeah.
Hans, go right ahead. You've got your hand raised.
Thank you, David, for a very good presentation. Really helpful. I've got a question on trust registries. Will there be a single trust registries for all of Europe, or will it be kind of a distributed at best, or perhaps even a fragmented approach, a trust registry per ecosystem or per country? And if so, how is then interoperability achieved? Could there be a chance that an issuer is trusted in one registry and not in another?
I would not think that could happen. I honestly don't know, and I don't think anyone actually knows fully yet. It's something that is being discussed. When it comes to the business wallet, it seems like there wouldn't be a trust registry apart from on the wallets, but it's something that is being discussed, but it's not clear, I would say, at least to my understanding.
I think it's a pretty important observation that the business to business and business to government is easier to implement, because the privacy aspects are not hanging over us as a dark cloud there. So that's why this might be the shortcut for the whole thing.
Thank you for the question, Hans, and the comment there, Bo. I've got a question for David. How can the Open Wallet Foundation community, well, what does WeBuild need, and how can the OWF help? How can our community, our projects, how can we participate in WeBuild? Do you need more projects? Do you need more folks testing? Do you need more folks implementing? Like, what's your wish list? What can we do for you? Because this has been a fantastic presentation. We appreciate it, but I'm sure there's some folks on this call who have not engaged with WeBuild before and are wondering how they can get involved.
Yeah. So there are some restrictions in this. So you need to have like an office in Europe and so on. You can see the like Google and these and all of these guys, they can be part because they have like a European presence. So that's one thing. On a kind of real, getting actually into the real project. So that's one thing. A lot of the organizations and people involved in WeBuild are actually also part in Open Wallet Foundation one way or another. As I said, I'm part of it for the Open Wallet Forum, so this is already happening, and I know a lot of people are following and watching what you are doing. But I think the main way to do anything really is this on interoperability testbed. If we are successful, which I think we should be because we were in EWC, so we already have done this pretty much. We hope to open it up to external stakeholders, also from other countries outside of Europe. And when we have that, then I think we can look into interoperability test, of course. And that I think Open Wallet Foundation has a key role there. So that is what I see in front of me. This will take some time. But maybe we can look into that in like half a year or so on. And of course, Sean, I have your contact details and Bo another one. So let's see if I hopefully can reach out in before the summer and see what we can do.
Awesome.
If you have questions, though, of course, anyone is. Feel free to write to me. And if you're a European organization, you can also join into WeBuild. You need to I will help you with that and so forth. But if you want to do that, reach out to me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We've only got 6 minutes left. Does anybody have another question for David?
And yeah, I would like to know the email address. Where can we reach out to you?
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's in the presentation that I sent to Sean, but I will also type it in the chat, so you can use it directly if you want to.
Yeah, it's in the chat, Denkin, right now if you check.
No. Great.
Wait a minute, Jorge, coming in with a last minute question. Go for it, Jorge.
Hey, David, in your presentation, you mentioned that there was some exploration into secure data exchange. I'm guessing that's outside of verifiable credential exchange. Could you perhaps shed some light into what other types of information exchange use cases, and specifically if you're working with any other open standards that are not open verifiable credentials? Any insight you can shed on that?
No, not really. I'm kind of thinking. No, it's verified credentials, yes, but what we're looking into is like using the wallet interactions and the whole ecosystem. Yeah, now he must have come.
Great timing, guys.
So that's a good timing. Yeah, he held off for 1 hour, so that's good.
Okay. I was curious if perhaps maybe you guys were looking at
okay. But send me an email, and I will pass this. I will help you with answering the questions. So send me an email and I'll answer the questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'll leave now, but thank you very much, and see you guys then.
David, fantastic presentation. Thank you again. And everybody on the call, appreciate the questions. We are not meeting next Monday. We are off next Monday. We come back the following Monday. But I'd love to thank David and Bo. Thank you for setting that up. That was fantastic. And with that, I'm going to end the call. Thank you, everybody. And for those in the States, happy Thanksgiving. Everybody else, we all get a free Monday or an hour back in our schedule next Monday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.